If you thought last week was a lot, buckle up. We start out with two deputies just trying to have like a chill, fun night until Ziva and Gibbs come in and ruin literally everything. So that's rude. They handcuff Sahar to a radiator and Ziva takes a bat and goes to like smash her skull in, but eventually decides on a ceramic owl instead, which is probably the better choice. In MTAC, Vance talks to Chief Verdano about the possibility of an attack on the senators, but at this point he's not even sure the threat is real, so he's not sweating it yet. Meanwhile, no one can really figure out where Bishop has run off to, until she bursts into the sheriff's office and comes face to face with Ziva. She pulls Ziva outside and is like, I feel like I might have come at a bad time, and then Ziva's like, my life is just a series of bad times, so... That's depressing. It turns out that Bishop came because she wanted to ask Ziva questions and she thought that now might be her only time. Ziva also soon realizes that Gibbs had no idea Bishop was coming, and Ziva smiles because Bishop's a rule breaker now. Back at NCIS, they figure out that Sahar was on her way to leading some splinter terrorist group that for some unknown reason fell apart, and then when it did, Sahar became a POW and lost everything. While they're discussing that, they see that there has been an attempted suicide bombing at a senator's event. While they're investigating, McGee pulls Bishop and Torres aside and essentially asks Bishop, what's happening? Bishop says that Ziva thanked her for rescuing Morgan Burke, who was the little girl from She last season. She also tells McGee that he should prepare himself because she doesn't think that Ziva is the same person that he remembers. We then cut to Ziva in Gibbs' basement. She has a flashback of her killing Ari, and it's a lot. So she sits down and pulls out her pills again. But before she can do that, she hears a noise and pulls her gun, but it turns out it's just Ducky, who has been standing in the dark for 4 hours. Slow day in the historian's office, I guess. Ducky says that he can't imagine what she's been going through these past few years all by herself. Then Ziva says she hasn't been alone. She had her daughter. And then she pulls out this picture and it's... Tali is technically in the picture. It turns out that Ziva has presumably been following Tali around with a camera for some time, just hiding behind fences, in trees perhaps, I don't know. Ziva also says that she took the picture on ice cream day, and she likes to imagine that Tali was really excited, and it's just, oh. Ducky asks the million-dollar question, which is, does Tony know? Ziva hesitates and then just says, it's complicated. Thank God, for a second there I thought we were gonna get a clear answer. Ducky says he hates that she thinks that Gibbs would have just abandoned her, and Ziva just kind of rolls her eyes and says that she left him a trail of clues, he just never came looking. She also says that no one will stand in her way. Back at NCIS, Gibbs sends Sloan in to interrogate Sahar. Sahar says instead of senator, she might have meant congressman. And by might have, she definitely meant congressman. There's been another attack. Again, they're able to stop the attack before anyone was injured. This time though, the Iron Citadel Protocol is activated, which gives Vance and his office additional powers. Vance also asks Gibbs where Ziva's head is because he talked to Ducky and it was leaving him feeling kind of yikes about it. Gibbs just kind of leaves without answering that question, which is comforting. Gibbs heads down to autopsy where he runs into Jimmy, who is very eager to talk to Ziva because what is he gonna say to Tony during their monthly fortnight session? Jimmy Palmer. You can always trust him to ask the big questions. They figure out that the would-be suicide bombers are members of a white supremacist organization and they can't really figure out why they would be working with Sahar. They decide that they should show the pictures of the bodies to Ziva and see if she recognizes any of them. Ziva is still trying to stay fairly low-key, so when she walks into the diner and McGee startles her, she very inconspicuously slams his head into the counter. McGee and Ziva hug, and it's just a really beautiful moment, and then they're talking about their children, and McGee shows her a picture of the twins, who are not babies anymore, by the way. They're like fully grown, toddling humans. He shows Ziva pictures of the bodies, but she doesn't recognize any of them. She did, however, speak to Ari's contacts, which... glad they keep in touch. It turns out that Ari was leading the splinter group that Sahar was a part of, and after Ari was killed, the whole thing fell apart, which is why Sahar blames Ziva. McGee then tells her to come back home and continue working on the case at NCIS. She walks back into the squad room and it's truly like this magnificent moment, but I cannot help but imagine that the people signing her in the lobby were like, Didn't you die? She sits down at her old desk and she looks across from her and of course has a flashback to Tony. But she's immediately interrupted by Bishop and she hops out of her chair and Bishop's like, no, it's fine, don't worry. I read your entire diary, so we're even. Wow, that's a lot of books. Torres then walks over and him and Bishop have like a whole back and forth and Ziva's like, oh my god. This is what we must have looked like to people. Casey, who literally has zero interest in meeting Ziva by the way, figures out that the bombs were never meant to go off and the attack was fake. Sloane also talks to Gibbs and tells him that the reason that he handed the interrogation off to her was because he was afraid of failing Ziva again. The team comes up and they're trying to show something on the monitor, but it has really bad frequency interference. So Gibbs hits it and a bug falls out. That's good. It takes them literally a quarter of a second to figure out that Ziva was the one who put it there. Bishop is like really taken aback that Ziva would do something like this, and I get that she's like surprised by it. It's just a lot of shock for someone who knows Ziva through the same means that I know Junie B. Jones. At the supremacist group hideout, Ziva tells Bishop and Torres that they shouldn't go in to serve their warrant because it'll just lead to a standoff. So Ziva tells Eleanor to stay in the car and Nicholas to follow her, and the mom energy is just radiating off the screen. Ziva and Torres then get into like a fake fight to lure the men out to watch. I don't know if it's just me, but if I saw two random people fighting on my lawn, I don't know if the first thing I'd do is be like... Ziva then gets Torres in a headlock and tells him, don't be a wuss, tell her how you feel. I know I said that Ziva killing Ari was the worst kept secret at NCIS, but... I think we might have a new contender. In interrogation, Gibbs gets one of the supremacists to rat on Chief Fredano, who has been working with Sahar the whole time. They head over to the chief's house to confront him, but he's already booked it. Gibbs and Ziva then have an argument about how Ziva went to Paraguay to rescue McGee and Gibbs even after she was told they were dead, and she got the wrist scar while making sure that no one could go after them for revenge. In her lab, Casey figures out that Ducky's phone number has been showing up in Chief Fredano's call logs. And Ducky's like, no, that's impossible. I don't even have my phone. I gave it to Ziva. That's great. Really good. In the squad room, everyone's in a tizzy trying to figure out where Ziva is and what the hell is going on. They figure out that Sahar actually wanted the Iron Citadel protocol to be activated. And also she's escaped. They find Chief Fredano and bring him into interrogation where he reveals that Ziva is actually helping Sahar rebuild in order to get her life back. Take everything I'm saying with like a by the way. They then show flashbacks of Ziva delivering shady drives to people and going into Vance's office and using the protocol to access funds and have them transferred to Sahar. They find Ziva's fingerprints all over the director's office, so they order a bolo for her to be arrested on site. But that might not be necessary because she's turned Ducky's phone back on and they can now track her down. Ziva meets with Sahar and her men in the little sheriff's office again. Once they confirm that they have access to their funds, Sahar pulls a gun on her anyway. Gibbs and the team burst in and Ziva reveals that yes, she did transfer the funds, however, she also alerted Interpol so that when they went to access the money, they would be arrested. Sahar says that she's not going back to prison and has her men kill her. Ziva walks up to Gibbs and she's like, how did you know I was innocent? Gibbs is like, I didn't. I was just hoping they wouldn't write you into a shitty arc. Later that night, Gibbs finds Ziva packing up in her office. Gibbs reveals that the reason he didn't go looking for her is because he lost her once before, and that if he thought she was alive and was wrong, it would be too much for him. Ziva, on the other hand, says that she would have lost Gibbs 1,000 times if that's what it took. Ziva also says there's one more thing she has to do before she can put this all behind her, but this time she has to do it alone. And then Gibbs like wipes a tear from her cheek and she like boops him on the nose. But then Gibbs' phone starts ringing. Who could it be? It's Tony. Gibbs says that when they couldn't find Ziva earlier, he actually called Tony and left a voicemail. He says he didn't say anything though, so he just breathed into the phone for a minute. But the reason he didn't tell Tony is because he thinks that he should hear it from Ziva herself. And then Ziva says he will. And then she walks out and that is into the light. There are a lot of different little things I want to talk about, but let's start with Sahar. I was surprised, I guess, by the reveal that Ari was her boss, just because I thought there might have been like a little bit deeper connection than that, and I still kind of do. I feel like we might not have gotten the whole story on that, especially when you look at last episode and Mr. Rogers was talking about how he could tell Ziva a whole sob story about Arya Sawari, and I feel like him losing his CEO position was like not it. I know I said last week like maybe she's Ari's daughter, which yes, far-fetched, I understand. Now I'm maybe wondering if maybe Sahar and Ari had a secret child. Maybe it doesn't involve a secret child at all. That is possible, believe it or not. I would not be surprised if there was more to this story than what we got. What that more is, I don't quite know. I don't know if they were lovers or something like that, or co-parents perhaps, but I just feel like there is something there that we don't know yet. Maybe. Gibbs. I made a Gibbs theory in the last video, I think, where it was like maybe the reason Gibbs didn't go searching for Ziva is because he thought she wanted to be left alone. I think that could still be like a little bit of a factor, but I actually think a video I made a while ago last season ended up being a little bit more accurate. I definitely think Gibbs deep down in his gut knows that it's a real possibility Ziva's alive, but I think it's too painful for him to admit that to himself and be wrong and like have to grieve her again. The episode didn't resolve everything between Gibbs and Ziva, which I don't think it could, but it looks like we're taking a step in the right direction. I also thought it was interesting that they've kind of started this lore that Ziva has been in the background of episodes that we didn't even know she existed in, which we did see in She, like we know that she was making moves in the background, but I think it's interesting that they brought it back to past seasons as well, like she really has been there the whole time, which is a lot. What is that one more thing that Ziva has left to do? Because I'm very curious. Does it have to do with Adam? Because we learned nothing more about Adam or Odette, for that matter, in this episode. It certainly seemed like something was not left on great terms between her and Adam, so I wonder if she's maybe going to work that out. Did she learn something more from Ari's contacts that she didn't let on, that she has to go like deal with? Could it be the secret child? I don't know. Is it something with Tony? Like maybe working things out with Tony is the first step and then she's like, I can start my life. I certainly imagine we would bring it back up again when she comes back. Speaking of Tony, I think the fact that she says it's complicated means that Tony at least knows something, anything. So I would certainly imagine that if nothing else, he knows she's out there. He knows that she's alive. It also certainly looks like they're aiming to reunite Tony and Ziva, like that is the goal. I would love to see their reunion. I don't know if we would. You know, if that's something they would intend to do off screen and then be like, hey, here we are, we're family again, what's up? Either way, I would just love to see them back. I would love to see all three of them on screen at the same time. It would be stunning. The photo. Let's talk about the photo for a minute. This kind of sets it up that Ziva has, you know, at the very least seen her daughter since the incident. And they make it clear that it's not like Odette taking the picture, sending it to her. It was Ziva who was there, like National Geographic style. She has seen her daughter, and I also imagine has seen Tony. That doesn't mean that she's like interacted with them in any capacity, but she has at least like seen them with her own two eyes. I just feel like Tony has to know something is up, because surely at some point he's seen this woman with a big ass camera lens who just kind of happens to look like Ziva and been like, that's peculiar. Do you think that like when Tony takes Tolly to the library or something and it's like dead silent and then they just hear like ch 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 Tony's like, oh no, she's here. It's not funny. It's really sad, but like, oh my. And side note, I'm like certainly not a geography whiz by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think you can see the French flag in the background of a photo confirming that they are in Paris. Maybe that was just me, but I have been wondering, like, are they truly in Paris? Also, I think it's very interesting that Tony never seems to pick up the phone when they want him to pick up the phone, and I get that there might be some like time difference issues. I think it's awfully convenient that when they find Ziva's office, Tony suddenly can't pick up the phone, or when Ziva goes missing, Tony suddenly can't pick up the phone. And maybe that is just like terrible timing, or maybe he is a little bit in on it. I don't know. As far as like the episode as a whole, I was never like genuinely concerned that Ziva was actually working with Sahar. I was a little concerned though when there was only 15 minutes left of the episode and it really hadn't hit the fan yet, because I was like, oh my god, she's really gonna be in prison for like the next 2 months until we see her. It will be her parole hearing. Great. The whole like questioning of her allegiance was actually like a much smaller part of the episode than I thought it would be. I'm not mad about it because the things that we did get in that other time were really great. I think it's so interesting that even though Bishop got like a little bit pissed that Ziva bugged the place, she was still in her corner. Like, she was in her corner almost, dare I say, to a fault. At one point where they're really leaning towards the fact that Ziva might be working with Sahar, Bishop's like, what else could she do? I don't know anything but that. Like, I feel like there were other options. I also thought it was interesting that Bishop warned McGee that Ziva might not be who he remembered her to be. And I don't know if that's because, you know, Ziva genuinely has changed a lot, which like she has, to be fair. But I also wonder if part of that is the fact that Bishop really only knows Ziva through her diaries, and Ziva was never the same person outwardly as she was in those writings. So I wonder if, you know, Bishop expected this more poetic Ziva than what she got. I don't know. I think it might have been like a mixture of both, perhaps. Morgan Burke is really an unsung hero, by the way, for bringing this whole situation together. I loved her scene with McGee. I thought it was so sweet. I loved being able to hear them talk about their children and just like touch on their lives a little bit. I even loved like the non-interactions we got, like with Jimmy talking about the Fortnite situation. I don't know in what context that gets brought up. Like, you know who that skeleton reminds me of? Your dead love. How is Ziva, by the way? We really still do need to see Vance and Jimmy interact with her, particularly Jimmy, because oh god, I love them so much. I also absolutely adore that moment where Ziva told Torres not to be a wuss, tell her how you feel. There were a couple moments where you could see Ziva seeing what the situation was with Bishop and Torres, and just like the look on her face when she was like, oh my god. I know it might be a little bit of a stretch, but god, would I love to see Bishop and Torres and Tony and Ziva in the same room interacting. The possibilities are endless. Next week's episode is Going Mobile, I believe, and it seems very gnome forward, which just a natural transition. It seems like there's gonna be a lot of Gibbs and Sloane stuff, which I am really intrigued to see. I really do kind of love Gibbs and Sloane together. Maybe Ziva took Sloane in a headlock and was like, don't be a wuss. Speaking of which, it does say that they're gonna continue talking about the effects of Ziva's reappearance, which is really exciting. I like that she's kind of a lingering aura even when she's not physically there. And even beyond that, I think in the 4th episode, Vance makes Bishop, Torres, and McGee do like cleanup duty to repent for their sins of lying to him last episode. Going even farther beyond that, I think it's been said that her next episode back will be before the holiday break. I don't know if that's been confirmed anywhere, but it's been what I've seen a couple times. And then her episode after that will be in 2020. If they're going with a holiday episode, that's a really interesting angle, because usually they try and keep it like very like not related to the rest of the episodes, but they could, I mean, season 17, it's never too late to shake it up. So I do think they said that the first 2 episodes are their own arc and then the second are like their other own arc, but I could be wrong, or that could have changed or something along those lines. And then I would just love to see her do episodes beyond her 4th one. And I do think there are ways that they can have her be happy and reunited with her family and still bring her back once in a while for special cases. I don't think that's out of the question, but I'm just so excited to have her come back again. I feel like it's Christmas. We're getting 4 episodes of Ziva. Are you kidding me? That's incredible. I love this character so much and I missed her so much. And there was a time where I'm like, oh god, this sucks. Like, we're never gonna see her back here. And we did. These are really some of my favorite episodes, these past 2. Just all we've learned and the emotional growth and just, It was not like, you know, Ziva's back, let's just have her stab someone and talk about Tony. Like, I was just deeper than that. I simply just don't want to stop talking about these episodes, so I might just not. Ever. That's fine. I'm really excited for the rest of the season, even like beyond the Ziva of it all. Please let me know your guys' thoughts on Out of the Darkness and Into the Light. I know some people were like a little iffy the first episode, and then the second episode really sold them. Did you feel similarly? Did you like them both, or were you like just not sold at all? Did you not like either of them? That's fine. Please let me know your guys' thoughts on the whole arc, and I will see you guys for the recap and review of Going Mobile.